What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 363 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, November 11, 2020. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy Veterans Day as well to anyone who has served. If you know anyone who served, thank you for your service. Before we go any further with today's episode, do got to mention two things. One, you've probably already noticed if you are subscribed to the channel, and if you're not, why aren't you? My exclusive interview with one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions, Danny Burch, went up earlier today. Great interview, great guy, has a great story. Check out that exclusive interview in audio form right here on the channel right now, or at least after you're listening to this episode of #AskGSM, obviously. That went up earlier, so check that out. The article form, the article version of the interview is either up now by the time this video is up, or will be up soon on dailyddt.com. So we got that going up today, and then tomorrow, my exclusive interview as conducted last week over the phone with WWE SmackDown star Bianca Belair. Another awesome interview. She's just a fantastic person. We talked a lot about her move to SmackDown, her husband Montez Ford, participating at Survivor Series coming up in a couple of weeks, and a lot more. So check out that interview, again, in article form on Bleacher Report, first thing tomorrow morning, and also in audio form right here on the channel tomorrow morning as well. So again, if you aren't already subscribed to the channel, again, why aren't you? But no better time than right now to subscribe. We got the exclusive interviews with Danny Burch, Bianca Belair, Cameron Grimes 2 weeks ago, Johnny Gargano last week, Kevin Owens in recent months, Paul Heyman, Jeff Hardy, and so much more. We also have these episodes of #AskGSM every single Wednesday. We have audio SmackDown reviews, audio reviews of SmackDown on Saturdays, Talking Smack reviews, Uncool with Alexa Bliss reviews, Raw Talk reviews. We have so much more right here on the channel. So again, no better time to subscribe than right now for daily content. So be sure to like this video as well, drop a comment, share the video. All that support is greatly appreciated. So with all that being said, let's get right into what you guys came here for today, that being the questions answered. If you want to send in questions to the show, you could do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So we'll get started here first with a couple of YouTube questions. First from Call Me PSN on YouTube. Was Seamus and Drew McIntyre's backstage segment on Raw foreshadowing a feud, or them becoming a tag team, or just a meaningless segment? It definitely was not meaningless. Now, a lot of what we see on Raw every week is definitely meaningless. I mean, look no further than the 24/7 title bullshit. That was such a complete waste of time on Monday. But no, the McIntyre and Sheamus stuff, they started last week. They followed up on it this week. It's clearly headed somewhere. Now, McIntyre will not be on Team Raw at Survivor Series. It looks like he won't be at Survivor Series at all, unless he wins back the WWE Championship from Orton next week on Raw, which is very possible, by the way. But it looks like he won't be on Team Raw. He may not even be at the Survivor Series pay-per-view at all, which is fine. But they're clearly planting the seeds there for a Sheamus-McIntyre feud. Maybe Sheamus helps Drew win the championship back next week. And then Sheamus believes, because he's a heel, obviously, hey, because they helped you win back the belt without Drew maybe even knowing, you owe me a title shot. And that leads to them feuding going into the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I think that feud, first of all, has to happen. It will happen. They're clearly setting that up. Maybe they'll team for a couple of weeks, and then the dissension begins. I don't see this being like a long-term tag team thing, and then they split up. They don't need to be in the tag team division. Who are the current tag team champs? The New Day? The New Day are busy with the Hurt Business. Keep that feud exclusive to those titles. We don't need Drew and Sheamus involved. They can team for a week or two, kind of like Roman and Jay. You know, Roman and Jay teamed up a time or two before Roman turned on Jay. Now they were rivals, or they became rivals, and now they're kind of buddies again as heels. You didn't really need to see them as a long-term tag team. We don't need to see that with McIntyre and Sheamus either. So I think a feud at some point sooner rather than later is the way to go. And I think the best way to do that feud has got to be over the WWE Championship. Now, I don't necessarily want to see Sheamus as WWE Champion. I don't know if I would be opposed to it, but just because his last title reign, his last world title reign, soured me so much on the idea of him ever holding another world title. That's why I just may not want to see it. But, you know, Sheamus is really good. I'm glad he's seemingly getting more of his just due in WWE. He is very good. He's been kind of slept on for a while now. So I love the idea of a Seamus McIntyre feud, storyline, whatever, given their history, their chemistry. We've never seen a formal feud between the two in WWE before, so I'm all for it. And I'm definitely positive, unless WWE/Vince just gets super cold on the idea in the next week or two, and they just drop the storyline out of nowhere, which has happened before, I think we are headed for a Sheamus and Drew program, probably around Royal Rumble season, if not TLC. Their second question, thoughts on AEW's games announcements in console or on console and mobile. So I didn't watch the entire video yesterday. I saw clips and highlights on social media. It looks cool. It does. Now, people pooping on the graphics. First of all, I think the graphics look good. Compared to a lot of the other shit I've seen, like the TNA video game, which was fun for different reasons. I mean, technically, some of the honestly, for the TNA video game that came out over a decade ago, some of those graphics are better than some of the recent WWE video game graphics, so I can't really shit on it too much. That game was not great, and I think AEW really wants to put a lot of effort in to these games before they're playable. They don't want to rush it out for the sake of rushing it out. They've been saying this for a year now. Literally dating back for over a year, they've been talking about they want a video game, but it's got to be done right. Now, from what Cody Rhodes said in his tweet on Tuesday night, they're going to have a No Mercy-esque game, which immediately sold me, because No Mercy is fucking sick. No Mercy is very simple. It's a great game. They have a big roster. AEW is a big roster, too. So I'm completely sold on that idea. I don't know what kind of console it would be for. Probably the newer ones. I don't know. I don't own any of that shit. I might just buy a fucking PS5? Would they release it for PS4? I have no idea, but I would definitely play that. The casino game, I'm not really into that type of shit. I don't really care about the whole double or nothing casino game, whatever. But for people who are, they probably like that. Obviously, as you guys probably know, the announcement that intrigued me the most was the one surrounding the apparent GM mode. It's called AEW General Manager. And they literally used the words General Manager mode. And I think Excalibur said in the voiceover, General Manager mode is back. For the first time in, a decade? We haven't had a formal GM mode in any wrestling video game since SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. And no, I don't count the whole fucking universe mode. That shit doesn't count. That is way too much effort for me. I just want to book the superstars, keep it simple. I don't even want to play the matches. I don't give a fuck about the matches. I just like to simulate the matches. I create my own storylines in my head. Give me a roster. Give me a budget. Give me, 2 shows. I mean, I guess it's only AEW, but I don't know. I just give me that stuff, and I'm content. Now, the only part I don't like about that is that it's a mobile game. I don't give a fuck about mobile games. I don't play games on my phone. I just don't like it. I'm way more comfortable on my computer. For example, Among Us is available on your phone. I haven't played it on my phone yet. I've completely only played it on my computer. I just don't like the phone games. I haven't played a phone game in like 10 years. I tried to play the whole WWE Supercard thing. I tried it for a couple of months. I just kind of lost interest after a while. So the mobile thing kind of, not soured me on it, but I just don't love the idea that it's on mobile. But we'll see. I don't want to get too excited, and then they don't do it. Then it's like not good. You know what I mean? But it does have promise. It sounds cool. The console game itself looks cool. It sounds cool. And I trust that they won't put out a product unless they have full faith that it's going to be good. Not like 2K rushing to put out a fucking game every year. So I am hopeful. It looks good. Some people are already pooping on the graphics. It's not even the finished product. And if that's not the finished product, they're coming along pretty well. So I like what I've seen so far. No Laura from Facebook. The first question was, do you think Nikki Cross will join Alexa Bliss in The Fiend soon? I don't, nor do I really even want to. I mean, someone else brought this up, but what about the idea of a Fiend and Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross stable? I mean, it's not the worst idea. I don't know. Bliss and Cross have kind of, as fun as they were together, it served its purpose. It ran its course. It's time to move on. Nikki Cross would be great in the Raw Women's Championship picture right now. Asuka needs fucking challengers, and there's a lot of talent on Raw. The issue is that they're just booking Asuka to look like a complete afterthought at the moment. Nikki Cross can be in that picture. She and Asuka had some great matches in NXT. I think an Asuka and Nikki Cross feud over that championship could be great. So, no, I don't really want to see that. I would rather just see The Fiend and Alexa Bliss. There's no need to water it down. Maybe if a Bo Dallas joined, which on paper sounds dumb, but Remember, Bo Dallas is the real-life brother of Bray Wyatt, and people have been saying for years that they should do something with Bray and Bo on TV. We never got it. Bo hasn't been on the fucking show in like a year, literally like 1 year. So I don't know what his status is. I don't know if he's dealing with something. I have no clue. But that would be a good way to bring him back if he was like a lackey for Bray. One guy, one girl. I think that would work. But no, I don't really want to see Nikki Cross involved. I mean, maybe originally, like a year ago, I know someone was pitching that. I think Jeremy had brought up, what if they put Eric Young in there or Nikki Cross? With Nikki Cross's current character, I don't want to really see her involved with Alexa Bliss anymore. I don't want to see them reunite and go after the tag titles. We've already seen that twice. So, no, I would leave her out of it. I would do the feud between Nikki and Alexa, have Alexa win, and then just move on. And then you could do Nikki and Asuka at some point, maybe not right afterward because she just lost to Alexa Bliss, but at some point you could do Nikki versus Asuka one-on-one for the Raw Women's Championship. I think it's a win-win. Thomas B. from Facebook's got 2 questions here. First one being, would you be surprised to see President Trump at a future WrestleMania? I mean, I guess current President Trump because he lost to Biden last week, but anyway, that's besides the point. I think FD, got to give you a shout out here, FD. Love your questions. You sent in a question about some political stuff about Biden and Trump. We don't talk about the politics stuff here on the show. I mean, I am willing to answer non-wrestling related questions here on the show. I mean, John Ritland knows that I answer movie questions all the time. I love that shit. I love talking about books and movies and stuff like that. I don't talk about politics, though. At least not here in the show. I don't really talk about them in general, but definitely not here in the show. This is largely wrestling related, so I won't really talk about Trump and Biden and shit like that. But as far as Thomas's question is concerned, would I be surprised to see Trump at a future Mania? No, I mean, probably not anytime soon. I mean, it's a tough thing because I thought when Trump became president that we would see him involved in WWE or Vince specifically, trying to get the rub from President Trump, blah, blah, blah. They've really distanced themselves in almost every way from Trump. You know, they inducted him into the Hall of Fame in 2013. He's been on Raw a bunch. He was in the crowd. I completely forgot that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2013. He was in the crowd for WrestleMania 29, which was in the New York, New Jersey MetLife Stadium area. And if he was going to be at any Mania, I would assume it would have been at WrestleMania 35 because that's around where he lives or whatever. I don't see that happening at this point. If he was to be there, first of all, he's a busy guy. He's got other priorities. Not that he wouldn't go, because he was at the NASCAR thing, I think, earlier this year, wasn't he? The Daytona 500, I believe. So it's not that he wouldn't be there, but I feel like if WWE really wants to distance some stuff... I mean, we all know Vince is a fucking Republican, that he's a big Trump fan. We know they're very good friends. That's no secret. But they may not want to make that public to not alienate part of their audience. So honestly, from a business standpoint, it's probably smart they don't show him on TV. Not that he can't appear backstage or something, but just probably not on television. He's a very, to put it lightly, polarizing figure. Regardless of what you think of Trump, I think it's just a smarter idea to not feature him on the show. Honestly, like, the fans hate Vince McMahon enough. I think it would be the wrong call to put Trump on the show anytime soon. And I'm not really, I guess I was a little surprised he hasn't been on the show in recent years, but now that I think about it, it was probably for the better. And not that he won't appear at a future WrestleMania, but it's probably for the best that he likely doesn't. Thomas's second question, what is the likelihood, in your opinion, of there being fans at WrestleMania 37? Pretty good. Not a full crowd, obviously. We're not talking about 70,000 people in Florida. If that's where they do WrestleMania, which is looking likely at this point based on rumors and stuff. I feel like they're going to try to get at least, maybe not 1,000, maybe a couple thousand, depending on where they do it. Is it at the Amway Center still, and they try to fit in a couple thousand people? Is it... I mean, I think the bigger stadium would be nice to get that WrestleMania feel, but you just don't fill it up to capacity, obviously, or even half that capacity. I mean, if it's like 80,000 people, maybe they try to get 8,000 people in there, all spread out, 10,000 people. I mean, I would rather have that. I've seen some people say, oh, don't even do it at all. Do it at the fucking Thunderdome. I mean, yeah, there's going to be a lot of empty seats, but it's better than no people. Like, the AEW pay-per-views have just a much better feel to them than a lot of the WWE shows because there's actual people there. They're not as loud. There's not a lot of people, but it's better than nobody, in my opinion. You see a lot of empty seats, but again, it's better than nothing. So I think there will be fans there, at least some fans. I think there should be fans there if it's safe to do so, and this thing doesn't get 10 times worse or whatever. I guess we'll find out. But I think there will be. I mean, WWE has got to know that other sports, even AEW, other companies are running these events with fans now, with a limited capacity. They have the Thunderdome, so they really can't do fans right now, but they're already doing that with NXT. They're already beginning the process of letting fans back into the buildings. And I'm sure by WrestleMania, November, 4 or 5 months from now, they'll definitely already begin the process of letting people back in the building. So I think there's a pretty good chance we will see people in the crowd, albeit not many, for WrestleMania 37. FD's first question: speaking of WWE, with a number of major personnel being recently released by the company, most recently a couple of days ago, their biggest release, a longtime WWE ring announcer Tony Chimel, do you feel that WWE is currently in damage control mode and mass budgetary cuts due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Also, if you are working for the WWE's top management, what would be your strategy in ensuring that the WWE can improve their financial state if WWE is really in a serious dire situation? The answer to that last part is that they're not. Just because they released a few people recently, I mean, obviously they've released a lot of people this year, does not mean that they're hurting for money. The exact opposite. I think this company is more profitable now than it's ever been before. They had to make cutbacks if they're not doing live shows, and could they afford to keep these people on staff? Absolutely, I think. I mean, I don't work there. I don't know a lot about money and the pandemic and how it's affected them financially and shit like that. But, I mean, looking at other companies, Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, AEW, if anything, these companies have signed more people than they have let go of people. Especially people that they didn't fire these people. AEW let Sadie Gibbs go and Jimmy Havoc. I mean, Jimmy Havoc was inevitable. But Sadie Gibbs just can't travel and probably won't for a while, so I kind of get that. But it's not like they let a quarter of the roster go. And if anything, they've grown their roster by like 20% in 2020, if not more. So I think they could have afforded to keep these people on staff. They have the money. They're not desperate for money. They're making all this money from the television contracts, the Saudi shows, which aren't currently running, mind you, but they still have that money from past shows. They're perfectly fine. Just because they let go of Tony Chimel does not mean they're in trouble by any means. To be completely fair, I did quote tweet the whole Tony Chimel announcement a couple of days ago. I did say it's a sad day. It is sad to see him go. He's been there for a long time. 20, 25 years? He's been there for a long time. The thing with Tony Chimel, though, he has not been a regular on the show in a long time. Probably close to 5 or 6, 7 years. I really don't remember him being a regular on SmackDown in at least 6 to 7 years. If not longer than that. At least not since Edge has been around, and that was 10 years ago. Or, I mean, before Edge, retired, came back, whatever. So, with Tony, I don't really know what he was even doing. He was being brought in for house shows, I think. I mean, honestly, I don't really even know. I'm not sure, and if that was the reason why he was around was because of the house shows, you don't really have much of a reason to keep these people around. And again, can they afford to keep them on staff? Yes. But if we're not going to use them anytime soon, it's not like they're on bad terms. They can always bring back Chimel in the future and people like that. Mike Rotunda, what's his name? God, the guy they let go, Jerry Briscoe. Oh my God, Jerry Briscoe. They let go after. I mean, he was with the company for a long time, but again, if his primary role was doing the house shows and being a producer, they don't really have much of a need for that right now. They gotta let some of these people go. I mean, they don't need as many staffers and trainers and coaches and agents and stuff as they have because there's no live shows. They don't really need as many people as they once did. They can always bring a lot of these people back, and I could see absolutely Chimel being brought back for stuff in the future. I mean, it's sad, but it's not shocking, at all. It really isn't that surprising. And I don't think it means, by any means, that WWE is in any real serious financial trouble. FD's second question kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, but with Alexa Bliss and The Fiend Bray Wyatt seemingly having cemented their connection with the Firefly Funhouse, do you see plans for them to expand their family to attract a new number of WWE superstars to join the Funhouse? If so, who would you want to see joining that stable? Do you see Nikki Cross being one of them, considering her feud with Bliss lately? I already said that earlier, but no, I really have no desire to see Nikki Cross in that stable. Yeah, maybe her old character from 2 years ago when she was a part of Sanity. But currently, again, I'd rather just see her do her own thing. I'd rather see Alexa Bliss do her own thing outside of Nikki. They've been joined to the hip now for a year and a half. I'm done with it. They've already been tag team champions twice. I'm good. But I did mention Bo Dallas. Now, I don't know how well that would work. Bo Dallas back in NXT would be interesting too, I guess, with the old Bo Leave character. But him being all depressed that he's been a loser now for so long and being recruited by Bray, I think has potential. I think it really does, depending on how they present it and how it's booked and stuff. He can kind of be like the lackey for the group. I don't want to see Bray form a fucking Dark Order stable over here with like 10,000 members. But I think if they have Alexa, maybe Bo, and maybe one other person, it could work. Like an Eric Young, if he was still around, that could have worked. But Eric's doing some great work right now in Impact, so I'm not really disappointed that he was let go and he's not a part of that stable. But yeah, it depends who it is, and it has to make sense. I think Bo Dallas makes the most sense to me. I'd really have to look at the rest of the roster. But for right now, just Bray and Alexa is perfectly fine. No need to oversaturate this thing. No need to oversaturate this thing at all. At Uagu91, their first question was, even before Pete Dunne confirmed it, do you think that his reasoning for attacking Kyle O'Reilly and aligning himself with Pat McAfee's group, I'm all over the fucking place today, I apologize, is due to his history with the Undisputed Era, courtesy of Roderick Strong turning on him to join them back at TakeOver New Orleans? I mean, yeah, Pete did confirm that last week. But yeah, when Pete did turn heel 2 weeks ago, my first thought was, holy shit, this is sick. So for example, there are situations like with the Matt Hardy thing, like at Final Deletion. Initially, I was like, okay, who the fuck is this guy? But then I'm like, oh my god, it's the follow-up from not the Final Deletion. What is it? The Elite Deletion. I was like, holy shit, that's the fucking follow-up from the Hardy Halloween special from 2 years ago. The Pete Dunne thing clicked with me instantly. It was like the first thing that came to my head, like, holy shit, he has history with these guys because they turned on him, specifically Roddy, 2 years ago. And he never really gave them a receipt for that. I mean, technically, he did beat them at War Games later on that year. But still, I think, it makes sense for him to want to turn on Undisputed Era. They were never kind to him. So now he's going to return the favor by turning on them. So yeah, that was the first thought that came to my head. I love Pete Dunne being with that group. I'll talk about the group a little bit later on, but yeah, it makes perfect sense. Do you feel that Johnny Gargano could make that North American title be the equivalent to what the IC title, as he wants to do? Make it equivalent to the Intercontinental Championship is basically what he's asking. And that's what Johnny told me in our interview last week. He wants to make it kind of like the Intercontinental Championship of the NXT brand. And honestly, it kind of already is. I mean, you make it sound like it's a worthless championship or it doesn't have much prestige. I mean, the North American title has been very well handled since it was initially created 2.5 years ago. Adam Cole had a pretty good reign initially, won it in an amazing match. Ricochet had a great reign for about 5 months back in 2018. Velveteen Dream also had a great reign. Johnny held it very briefly the first time, but Dream, for as cold as he is right now, had a great North American title reign last year with some really, really good title defenses against everyone from Pete Dunne to Roderick Strong to Tyler Breeze, Murphy, among other people, and Matt Riddle as well. So anyway, he won it, and then Roddy won it. He had a very good reign. Keith Lee had a great reign, arguably the best yet. It really does feel like the Intercontinental Championship of NXT. That was always the idea behind it, I feel. Keith Lee won the NXT Championship while North American Champion. So I would argue it's a pretty prestigious title. And then, of course, Keith had to vacate it, which made him look like an idiot because he lost the NXT Championship anyway. But now Johnny has it. Damian Priest had a fun reign. It already is kind of at that level, in my opinion. But can he continue to elevate it? Yes, I think he can. And at Uagu91's third question here, do you think it'll be impossible for anyone on Impact, formerly known as TNA, to surpass AJ Styles as being the best talent in that promotion? So basically what he's asking, I think, is anyone ever going to surpass AJ Styles as being the face of TNA/Impact? I don't think so. Just because AJ, first of all, is a once-in-a-lifetime talent. TNA, for as much flack as we give that company sometimes, they really treated AJ like a star. I mean, he was a former Grand Slam champion, Tag Team champion, X Division champion, World champion multiple times. They didn't use him great towards the end, but he had one of his last matches as the fucking World champion. So, again, it's not like he was completely buried in TNA. When the Hogan and the Bischoffs came in and people like that, yeah, he was kind of overshadowed, but he was a part of a lot of great factions, a lot of great moments, matches, title wins, stuff like that. So, I don't think so. The first thing I think of when I think of TNA is AJ Styles. And I don't know if anyone else will ever come close. I mean, the thing with Impact now, as entertaining as their product is, they can't hold down talent to save their lives. I mean, to a certain extent, it's good they're bringing in fresh faces. But outside of like Sami Callihan and Eddie Edwards, who's been there forever, and by forever, I mean just 6 years. Like James Storm, before he left a couple of years ago, had been there for like a decade. But Eddie Edwards is like the locker room leader right now, him and Moose. Beyond that, the entire roster is brand new. And like the Rascals are leaving. They were only there for 2 years. The LAX was only there for 2 years. People leave after like a 2-year period. Tessa Blanchard was only there for about a year and a half. Actually 2 years. She was there for about 2 years. Brian Cage was only there for about a year and a half. Lashley was there for a while, but he left. EC3 was there for a while. He left. Everyone, they just, it's not that they can't keep talent. People just have other aspirations. They want to move on. They want to go back to WWE or do other stuff, blah, blah, blah. So it's not really Impact's fault, but at the same time, I mean, they don't really have anyone they can build around. I mean, they have a few people, but not a lot of people. So it's not like, EC3, had he not gone back to WWE, he'd already kind of done all that he could do in NXT, or rather in TNA before he went back to NXT. But at the same time, though, he's not AJ Styles. He's not AJ Styles. When I think of TNA, I think of like the greatest superstars in TNA history. EC3 probably isn't even in that top 10. I mean, I'm talking about AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. I would put Christopher Daniels on that list. Abyss, definitely. Bobby Roode, James Storm, Austin Aries I would put on there. Jeff Hardy. EC3 might crack the top 10, but he doesn't come close, and he was there for a while. So no, I don't see anyone ever coming close to the level that AJ Styles reached in TNA. And yeah, I don't know. He is the greatest talent to ever come out of the company. And it also is partly due to the fact that AJ Styles is just, as I said earlier, a once-in-a-lifetime talent. At _Marceau, Mr. Marceau's question from Twitter was, if social media / wrestling reporting was around in the 90s, do you think it would have affected Shawn Michaels' career? I mean, so you're right and you're wrong. Social media wasn't around in the 90s. Wrestling reporting absolutely was. I mean, obviously the internet didn't really exist back when Shawn Michaels was at the peak of his push. But I mean, Dave Meltzer had been doing his thing for a while by that point. And it's not like people didn't know what was going on. There were dirt sheets. There were wrestling forums and stuff like that. People kind of knew the deal. I don't think every fan knew about, Shawn Michaels' attitude and him being a prick and stuff backstage, which is what he's referring to. But yeah, I just think with Shawn Michaels, no, I don't think, if social media was around back then, would it have affected his push? No, just because it was a different time back then. Like we hear about Tessa Blanchard having attitude issues. I think the real thing with her really wasn't the fact that she had an attitude. It was the fact that she very well could be a racist after all that stuff came out about her back in January. And I like Tessa, but that's not a reputation you want to have. And there was a lot of people saying that she did do it as opposed to that she didn't do it. So it's not even the attitude thing. I mean, it was more the fact that she was a racist. Was Shawn Michaels ever, accused of being a racist? I don't think so. He was just really hard to work with. And if the company was willing to put up with him, because he was so great and they didn't really have many other people back in the mid-90s, then that, whatever. I mean, it kind of worked out for the way that it did. Not that he was a great person back then. He was guilty of doing a lot of dumb stuff, a lot of stupid stuff. He was an all-out prick that's very well established. He will tell you that himself. No, I don't think it really would have affected much at all. If the world was the way that it is now back then, maybe. But if we're talking like the same landscape, the same companies were around, the same talent was on top, and you're just throwing social media into the mix, I don't think so. I don't really think it would have affected much at all. Again, unless he said something dumb on Twitter that would have gotten him fired. But then again, was he too valuable to even be fired at that point? I don't know. So, in a nutshell, I don't really think it would have affected much at all. Many wrestlers from that era have gone on record and saying if social media was around back then, their careers would have been over a lot sooner because they would have said a lot of dumb stuff and spoken out, and all their dumb incidents outside of the ring would have been caught on video and stuff like that. Maybe we would have found out, he got attacked. It was Shawn Michaels, that whole story about him getting attacked. And maybe we would have gotten it on video and it would have been all over Twitter. But that's happened with like Del Rio before. And Del Rio, he got into a bunch of fights and stuff. I mean, he's a complete piece of shit. He wasn't fired from WWE for that. He just left on his own accord. So, I don't really think it would have changed much at all. At noob_n_co 1991, will WWE make a secondary women's title like the women's version of the United States or the Intercontinental title? No, nor should they. I mean, those tag titles are completely pointless. It's not that a secondary title is a bad idea. It's that WWE, for as many great women as they have, the women's titles have been a complete bust. I mean, it had potential in the beginning, and even then I was kind of skeptical, but so far, it's been a complete fucking joke. Sasha and Bayley were the only real good champions they had. The Kabuki Warriors never defended them. They were a complete afterthought. The Iconics sucked. They always lost. Shayna and Nia are just not interesting at all. Nikki Cross and Alexa just kind of existed. They didn't really have a memorable reign by any means. So yeah, I just don't really care, to be honest with you, about the tag team titles. So if the tag team titles are so bungled, and it's like Impact, it's not even the idea of like another women's title is a bad idea, because Impact is reintroducing, bringing back the Knockouts tag titles for their women, and they have a lot of female teams, so it makes sense. WWE does not. So the female tag team title thing just doesn't work. At certain points, it may have, maybe like 5 years ago. In 2020, it doesn't work. Especially with the amount of emphasis they put on their women's division currently, it doesn't work. So if that doesn't work, why would a secondary title work, is my question. They have enough women, they have enough talent, but would WWE book it properly? The answer is no. Fucking Asuka is the Raw Women's Champion and is barely on the show right now. Sasha and Bayley are killing it over on SmackDown over the SmackDown Women's Championship, and Asuka's been a very good champion overall. But she's barely on the show. She's a complete afterthought at the moment. Why would bringing in a secondary title for the women change anything? The answer is that it wouldn't. We need less titles, I think, not more. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the YouTube machine. Check out his show, Real Honesty, with John Ritland. He's got a great YouTube show. But at Reborn Again, his question was, was I the only one, rather, who did not care for the Elite Deletion match of Full Gear? To me, it was just ridiculous and not for the right reasons. So no, you weren't the only one. I mean, as you guys could probably guess, I'm a big Matt Hardy fan. I love the Broken Universe stuff. It is very polarizing, though. And it doesn't help that we've had a lot of cinematic matches this year. So a lot of people are experiencing cinematic fatigue with the cinematic matches. Had this match happen when he first showed up in the company, as it looked like they were headed probably at Double or Nothing pre-pandemic. Actually, Matt showed up during the pandemic, but it looked like they were going to build to one at Double or Nothing before they didn't. It just wasn't safe to do so at that point. Maybe it wouldn't have been, not as bad, but like people wouldn't have been as against it. You know, like, had we gotten Final Deletion, maybe not Final Deletion, but like Ultimate Deletion, right now, people would poop all over it because it's just, we've seen so much of that stuff this year, it's nothing new. But when WWE did that, and when he did Final Deletion 2 years prior to that, they were fresh and they were new and they were exciting because it was different than anything else going on in wrestling at that point. We see so much of that stuff currently on the major shows, is that it really isn't anything new. So I liked the match for what it was. There were a lot of callbacks to the Hardy Halloween special, to Hardy's feud with Guevara here in AEW, to when he got attacked by Randy Orton with a concerto. That was the last time we ever saw Matt Hardy on WWE TV. They repeated that spot during the Elite Deletion match. So I liked all that stuff. Yes, it did drag on a little long. The AEW pay-per-views absolutely have to be shorter. There is zero question about that. They absolutely have to be fucking shorter. But other than that, I enjoyed it. But you're not the only one. I saw a lot of people saying, okay, that just wasn't for me. It was fucking dumb. It was way too long. It was stupid. I didn't like it. I don't want to say it was 50-50, but it was definitely not like a minority of people who didn't like the Elite Deletion match. There were a lot of people who just didn't care about it. So you're not alone in feeling that way. And I don't blame you either. It's just more a matter of personal taste. I love the Broken Universe stuff. A lot of people don't, and that's completely okay. I enjoy it. I love the creativity. I love the whole universe that Matt Hardy has created, so I enjoyed it. Other people, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. His second question, with the 23rd anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob having just passed by, which is incredible to think about, do you think it's the event that is that the event that turned the tide in the Monday Night Wars? If not, what would be your choice? Also, how did WCW botch Bret Hart so badly? We've talked about the Montreal Screwjob, I'm sure, so many times here on the show, but it is a great topic to bring up. Because a lot of people talk about when did the tide really turn in the Monday Night Wars? And you didn't specify if you meant in the favor of WWE or in favor of WCW. Probably in favor of WCW, because for WWE, the tide didn't really turn until, I think it's pretty set in stone, when Mick Foley won the WWE Championship from The Rock on Raw. That wasn't until the very first episode in 1999. So this is late 1997. So I assume you mean in favor of WCW. I would argue, for the Monday Night Wars, maybe. I would have to look at the ratings to see exactly when WCW started to catch fire. I would say, obviously, when the NWO was created, that the tide really started to turn in their favor. Ratings did not improve dramatically the next week. Like, oh my God, Nitro's beating Raw in the ratings. It was a gradual process. It took a while. But that was really when the first shots were fired from WCW. You can argue, when Nitro debuted and Luger showed up and all this other shit, that's when the shots were really fired in favor of WCW over WWF. But the momentum really didn't shift until NWO came around. That's when WWE was in some serious trouble. Because in 96, their product, outside of a few key superstars, fucking sucked. It really picked up in late 96. Around Survivor Series time, Psycho Sid was white hot back then. Diesel was doing some good stuff. They had Taker. Triple H was being built up. They were building up Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock had just debuted. So it was helping out for WWE to have that stuff. It helped to have that stuff going on at the time. But for WCW, they were just killing it on almost a weekly basis back at that point. So the Montreal Screwjob, I can't even say it was the final nail in the coffin, because obviously WWE won the Monday Night Wars. But it didn't help. It didn't help. Raw became a more musty program. It was already kind of an exciting show by 97 with the whole Bret Hart stuff and him turning heel and all that other shit. But Raw was still getting killed. As great of a show as it was still getting killed in the ratings most weeks in 97, 98. So I don't think that's what turned the tide in favor of WCW. I would say the NWO stuff in 96. It obviously helped. There's all that interest in Bret Hart coming in. And then, as you said, completely fucking butchering it. How you even managed to do that, I don't know. Then again, though, EC3, EC3 is no Bret Hart, but he was the first name that came to mind. How do you bring in a guy like EC3 who has so much potential and then completely fucking butcher him, too? WWE is guilty of that with so many people. But with Bret Hart specifically, he had so much momentum. Not even momentum, but so much buzz coming out of the Montreal Screwjob. They brought him in a month later to make him a fucking referee? What the hell? His run was so unspectacular in WCW. He was pissed about it. He blames Bischoff. Bret Hart does. That made no sense. So, WCW probably could have continued to do really well in the Monday Night ratings had they kept Bret Hart and used him well. But they didn't, so he squandered out. He kind of fizzled out pretty quickly. Thankfully, they had people like Goldberg and DDP to kind of pick up the pace. Savage was still around. Hogan was still pretty popular by that point. The entire NWO, the Wolfpack, blah, blah, blah. But, Bret Hart didn't really factor in any of that. But had he, maybe they would have done better for themselves. But they completely fucked up his push and how they handled him. It was just a complete embarrassment for how they used Bret Hart back in late 97, early 98. It was just a joke by that point. But I wouldn't say that was what turned the tides. I would go back to 96, but no, that was definitely a blow to WWE, although they recovered pretty well, to their credit. They lost Bret Hart, and they lost Shawn Michaels a couple of months later, but they rebounded pretty well with guys named, I don't know if you know who they are, but Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, among many others. So the losses of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Diesel and Razor Ramon were big blows to WWE, but I would say they recovered pretty well. Here's the next question. Does WWE really think that Lana can be an effective babyface or just effective in the ring in any way for that matter? I guess. That must be why they're giving her so much TV time. She's literally on the show every fucking week. The thing with Lana, a couple of things. The whole babyface push is such a joke because she's just not good. She's just not good. So, well, two things. One, I don't know how anyone can buy into her as a babyface. If there were crowds there right now, I'm not sure how many people would be cheering for her. I would argue zero. Because what, she got put through a table every week? You can't you can't manufacture this stuff. It's got to be organic. Daniel Bryan, they did not beat him down every fucking week because they wanted to get him over. They beat him down because they wanted to bury him. And because of that, it got him over. For Lana, I mean, people are saying she's getting buried because of the Miro stuff. And I mean, I could absolutely see that. I kind of agree with that too. But I guess the idea behind it is, no, we're trying to push her. So feel sympathy for her because she got put through a table. No, I mean, I feel more sympathy for Chad Gable, who wasn't even on the show right now, for getting labeled with a dumb gimmick and Shorty G. Lana is not a babyface. She's not good. She can't really talk. She's annoying. She's not likable at all. She's not likable. But it's not even like she's a good wrestler, so that might make it all worthwhile. She sucks in the ring. She's fucking terrible. So that's the thing with this whole Lana push. It doesn't make any sense. All she does is lose. So even if she is the sole survivor at Survivor Series, who the fuck would possibly care? She sucks. So it's not even like, oh my god, she's over. Maybe she'll have great matches now. She's not even that good. She's one of the worst women they have on that roster. I don't understand it at all. I mean, you have to be completely tone deaf to think that Lana could be an effective babyface on your show. She can't really be effective in any other role aside from manager. I hate to say it, but she was only really ever good as Rusev's manager. Other than that, she's completely worthless on the show. As a manager, like to Natalya, no. As a tag team partner, no. As a championship challenger, no. Heel, babyface, the answer is that she's just not good in any role aside from managing her own husband, who's now gone. So I think she's just a lost cause at this point, at least in my opinion. Moving on from that to his next question, do you feel Full Gear delivered overall, and do you feel it more than made up for All Out? I do, on both questions. I thought it was a great show. A lot of people are saying one of the best shows of the year, and honestly, I agree. I mean, that might not be, saying a lot, because a lot of the pandemic shows, no crowd, which is not as exciting, but there's been a lot of, good shows. I mean, between Wrestle Kingdom, I didn't see, but I heard that, that's always amazing. The TakeOver Blackpool 2 show back in January from NXT UK was great. TakeOver Portland was great. TakeOver 31 was great. I enjoyed WrestleMania. I enjoyed SummerSlam. There's been a lot of good pay-per-views this year. Revolution was great back in February from AEW. And this show was also really, really good. But as you said, more importantly, it made up for that lackluster All Out show, which was definitely the weakest show they've done to date. Far from a terrible show, but by AEW standards, it sucked. It sucked. They had a couple of good matches. The crowd sucked. There were a lot of matches going into that show. It wasn't even like I was hyped through the roof for All Out, because there were a lot of matches on paper that just didn't make sense, and I just didn't give a fuck about. So the overall show just didn't really do much for me. Going into Full Gear, I was looking forward to it, and all the matches I was looking forward to, for the most part, delivered. I mean, there wasn't a bad match in the entire show. There were a couple matches I didn't think were that good, like Sheeta and Rose. I didn't think that was that good, but it wasn't terrible. And overall, I thought it was a great show. So, yeah, it was definitely one of the better shows of the year, in my opinion. We're going to have to revisit that at the end of 2020 to see if it was the show of the year in 2020. I don't think so, but it comes close. At Jeremy8911 from Twitter, his question was, thoughts on the Pat McAfee stable, and could you see Pete Dunne beating Finn Balor for the NXT Championship and dropping it to Kyle O'Reilly down the road? That actually makes a lot of sense. Balor's hurt right now. They might have to strip him of the title, and I really hope not, but he's hurt right now. Pete Dunne beating him, I wouldn't do it just yet, because Balor's only been champion technically since September. And I say technically because he's been out for a month now, so he only really had a month-long reign. And he had that one great match with Kyle O'Reilly. But yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I mean, anything could change between now and then. Someone might get really, really hot. Karrion Kross might come back. You might want to put the belt back on him. Never got a real run with it. So who knows? But from a storyline standpoint, he turned on Kyle O'Reilly. So that would make a lot of sense. Pete Dunne finally wins the NXT Championship. I think becoming the only man to hold both the NXT and NXT UK titles, which would be cool. So yeah, I like the idea. The Pat McAfee stable overall, I've really liked so far. The promos have been good. It makes sense. I think Pat McAfee in this role is great. I wasn't sold on him a couple of months ago, but he sold me after that TakeOver match. And him being in this managerial talking role, I think is perfect. Lorcan and Birch, great right where they are. Dunn is a great addition to the group. It's a very good group overall, and I'm very happy they're doing it. They have a lot of stables right now in NXT, it feels like. And I don't love stables, but this one makes sense. And if it's leading to a War Games match, then sign me up, because that could be a lot of fun. Jeremy's second question, do you think the Hurt Business will win the Raw Tag Team titles next week on Raw? There's a very good chance. I mean, if history has taught us anything, there's a great chance that'll happen. You go back to, let's see, did the tag titles change hands before Survivor Series 2016? No, because New Day didn't lose them. And over on SmackDown, Heath Slater and Rhino still had them. I know in 2017, the Bar beat the Shield to win the Raw Tag Team titles. In 2018, AOP beat Rollins and Ambrose right before Survivor Series to win the Raw Tag Team titles. In 2019, I'm trying to think. Did we get a title change last year? Who were the champions last year? What was the champions and champions match? Oh yeah, they did actually change hands. The New Day beat the Revival right before Survivor Series for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. So we've got a tag team title change from both brands multiple times in the last couple of years. I could very well see them doing the Hurt Business versus the Street Profits at Survivor Series. That's a fresh match too. I would like to see that. I would still like to see New Day and Street Profits. It's not exactly a dream match, but it's as close as you're going to get, I think. And we're not going to get it anytime soon due to being on, the two teams are on separate brands. They're on separate shows. So I would like to see the New Day retain on Monday. They just won the Raw Tag Team titles anyway. I do want to see the Hurt Business win them at some point. I just wouldn't do it on Monday. Maybe a TLC. At Colin_McAndrew, has Pat McAfee's NXT run made you more interested in the show? It has. I mean, I always look forward to NXT anyway, but I think a lot of people would agree, and myself too. The show has kind of lost some buzz, electricity, whatever, in the last couple of months during the pandemic. But they've done a good job of rebounding, I would say, in the last at least month or two. At least since TakeOver 31. It's been a much better show since then, I would say. A much more exciting, a show worth looking forward to. That's not just dull or whatever. It's a good show, but never great. It has been quite great in the last couple of weeks, specifically Halloween Havoc. But Pat McAfee has a lot to do with that. The stable is a breath of fresh air. It's something new. Maybe I'll grow to hate it, and it'll be the worst part about the show in a couple months. They'll drag it into the ground, but NXT rarely does that, so I have faith that they'll do right by it. But yeah, so far so good, and Pat McAfee, I am always looking forward to NXT to see what he's going to do next, as well as the rest of his faction. At Scarlet One, we'll close out with our 3 questions here. Best and worst of AEW Full Gear. So the best of the show, I really enjoyed the overall show, like I said. I enjoyed Elite Deletion. That wouldn't be in the best category, but I enjoyed it. The best would probably be the Young Bucks and FTR. Was probably the match of the night. That was a great match. I really liked the opener between Kenny Omega and Adam Page. I thought that was a fantastic match. Trying to think, what else was there? Elite Deletion I enjoyed. The worst, I mean, Shida and Rose was not a bad match, but not nearly as good as their Double or Nothing match. It was just kind of there. Awkward, sloppy spots. Just, I didn't love MJF and Jericho. Felt a little too slow for me. Not a bad match. Definitely one of Jericho's weaker matches in the company. It was what it was. Didn't really give a fuck about it. The main event I liked, Kingston and Moxley, was a very brutal, violent I Quit match. Exactly what it should have been. I enjoyed that. And I'm trying to think, what else did we get? Cody and Darby I thought was a great match too. Really enjoyed that. Yeah, I thought it was just a very good show overall. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would say the good definitely outweighed the bad for Full Gear. Best and worst of the Wednesday Night Wars from last week. So the best of NXT and Dynamite, the best would be Ember Moon and Dakota Kai had a great match to kick off NXT last week. Kushida and Cameron Grimes also had a pretty good match. And I love the promo from Pat McAfee and Pete Dunne, Danny Burch, Oney Lorcan. Really liked that. From Dynamite, the only part that I really, really liked about the show, or actually 2 parts. The build for Full Gear I thought was really well done. And it was a good show overall. I really liked the show, actually. But the top 2 highlights were the MJF and Eddie Kingston promo, which was fantastic, and the Young Bucks versus Private Party. I thought that was a great match. The 2 weak points, the 2 worst quote-unquote parts of both shows. For NXT, I liked Toni Storm and Shotzi Blackheart. I thought they had a good match. The finish wasn't great, kind of lazy with the distraction roll-up. It wasn't as good as it could have been. It was shortchanged on time. Not as good as it could have been, so a little underwhelming. For Dynamite, the main event was a complete waste of time. They should have just skipped the whole Cody and Gunn. Who gives a fuck about the Gunn Club? I mean, seriously, Austin and Billy Gunn, it's fucking 2020. I don't need to see Billy Gunn wrestling on TV in 2020. No thanks. In the Dark Order, it wasn't even like the best members of the Dark Order. I like John Silver, but it was John Silver, Colt Cabana, and Preston 10 Vance. Who fucking cares? It felt like a dark main event, in the main event of a go-home show before Full Gear. Thankfully, Full Gear still delivered, but that main event did them no favors. It was a complete waste of time. And then finally, my thoughts on AEW games. I mentioned this earlier, but I was impressed with what I saw. The whole everyone dressing up as Steve Jobs thing was funny last night, but the graphics look good from what I've seen so far. I like the idea of a GM mode, an actual console game. Again, I don't love the mobile stuff, but that's just me personally, my own, preference. But it's cool they're making a game, and clearly they know how to do it. Kenny Omega's a big video game guy, so they're taking this thing really seriously. They're not putting out a game for the sake of putting out a fucking game. They're partnering up with Ukes, who I think worked on the original video games with WWE, I believe. And if so, that's awesome. But they're making like a No Mercy style game, and No Mercy is a great game. So if it's anywhere half as great as No Mercy, then I have faith it's going to be good. And that's going to do it, guys, for today's episode of #AskGSM, episode 363. Thank you, as always, for checking out the show. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. 2 quick reminders. As I said at the start of the episode, my Danny Burch exclusive interview with one half of the NXT Tag Team Champions is up right now on YouTube, right here on the channel, and should be up in article form on Daily DDT already, if not soon, so check that out. And also my exclusive interview with SmackDown star Bianca Belair, going up tomorrow here on the channel, first thing Thursday morning, and on Bleacher Report. So 2 great interviews coming your way and already up in certain cases, so check those out. Subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Like this video, drop a comment, share the video. All that support is greatly appreciated. Again, happy Veterans Day. Once again, guys, have a great one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.